Welcome to Draw Process. I'm Ike, drawing pages of my comic books and processing with you. Today's a time lapse of First Sun and Sword number 3, page 3. It's my latest comic. It's available now in print, but you can watch the process of making it here in this weekly series. This is the finished page. Digital lettering, everything else is traditional. The ink wash, the pencils are all done on one Bristol board, and you'll see that process here. So each page has a story. You don't simply want to reach a cliffhanger at the end. Sometimes we get advice and it's not the full picture. It's one nugget, but that can mislead you. So I know that happened to me, where I thought, oh, let's get to a cliffhanger, so someone wants to turn the page. But what about the page as a whole? It is a story, beginning, middle, and end. If that's done well, it should lend itself to leaning into the next page, making someone want to turn the page. There's a perception that it would be a part of a whole, that it's leaning towards what's going to happen next. But you develop that most strongly by making a story in itself, beginning, middle, end to the page. Beginning, Sun hears a cry for help, and in the end, they arrive up the hill to help whoever was crying for help, and they're looking at what they've found, and we don't see what they've found yet. So we go from surprise, we hear something, to we're going to do something about it, and we arrive. Some sounds like the cry for help, I'm writing the letters on the page. I'm not big on using sound effects in the book, but sometimes a noise someone makes, a scream or something, I'll go ahead and draw and write that right into the page. But the way that I'm doing it, not that I'm opposed to it fully, but for my book, for my tone, I'm going for, I don't want the word slash to go across the page. Let's just draw it, I guess, graphically enough that someone hears the word slash. I'm introducing something new here near the bottom of this page. I'm doing a series of small panels that are all symmetrical, same size, but I'm squeezing information into a tiny panel, and I'm using it to represent time passing and to communicate just a little piece of info. So what we have here, as they're running up the hill to go help, each of these little panels is them running with a slight variation to the terrain, heading up the hill. So it conveys that it took them a little time to arrive where they're going. It conveys they may be a little tired when they get there. The effort that's put into it. These things are part of the story. They're important. You don't want to skip that stuff, not necessarily. Later, I'm going to use this method to convey an entire scene. Instead of showing them enter a village and everything that happens when they're greeted and get settled in, and I don't want to show all that spread out over 5-10 pages. I'm trying to do a 45-page book, so I don't have time to waste on that. And it doesn't fit for the pacing I want to use. I want the pacing to fit the story purpose and my purposes. And so by using these little panels, we can see that they've greeted the village elder, they've been made comfortable and rested, and now they're hanging out around the fire with the villagers that evening as they celebrate and dance and so on. So I can show all of that in these little panels, and only take half a page maybe to do it. Of course, I'm still looking for a story to the page, beginning and end. So that was an interesting convention. When you're drawing panels that small, though, you do have to it's hard to be clear about what's happening. So it's pretty obvious right here that you just have 3 figures running. So 3 little scribbles running, is kind of easy to make out. But if they're supposed to be pulling out their weapons, shaking hands, doing things like that, gets harder to convey in these little images. So later, it's more challenging when I'm trying to show them greeting people and getting, laying down to rest and so on. That's going to be more challenging to convey in a small panel. But it's kind of fun too. You do want to have a strong, clear composition when it's so small, because people have to be able to read it quickly. Okay, so something I'm noticing with my page, the bottom panel is not as tall as the top panel. Um, the top row, the top tier of panels is a taller height than the bottom one. And some of that's just accidental because I'm just I scribble it onto the page. I'm just seeing what I want to do, and so sometimes that does result in less planning. But so it's somewhat an accident that I can, that I work with. I'm not here. My purposes are not to eliminate all accidents, but to play with them. So, but something I'm noticing is like the reason I went with a tall panel at the top is I wanted it to feel spacious. I wanted to show their figures in the environment hearing a scream. So as their attention is drawn out to everything around them, I wanted to create all that space, like the world is bigger now. And so I have the large panels at the top, but the bottom panel, that's the end point. It's maybe it's kind of the loudest. At least in this case, that should be the loudest, most dynamic panel, and yet it's smaller than the ones at the top. It's wider, but it's not as tall. It's just But I think that is good. I think it worked okay, and I can see why I did it. And that's all I'm telling you. I was trying to make a real spacious moment for the scream, and then the smaller panels for them running and getting there, and then the big splash at the end. I used to use full bleed panels more frequently, and now I'm using them more sparingly. Um, and I only want to use them if it feels right. Like, so it's going to be for a reason. It's not just, hey, I haven't done a full bleed panel in a while. A panel that goes outside the normal into the gutters all the way to the edge of the paper is what that means. Here in the bottom panel, I could have done a full bleed panel. But to me, now that I think of it, to me that when that happens, not only do you make it louder, but it's breaking out of the panel in a way that kind of breaks time. To me, it does. That's how I experience it. So if I keep it bounded and squeezed in like everything else is, it's compressed by time. And so if I want it to feel like the story's just going through beats, flowing, then if I do a full bleed panel, then time stops for a moment. It's an accent. It changes the tempo. So in this case, I don't want there to be a break in time, because this is just mid flow of they get to the top, they look over the edge, they see what they see, they engage. It's going to keep running. The film keeps going. Earlier, when I had Son's feet break the panel border, that's another example of like it kind of pops out, it kind of accents, it kind of breaks time. But in that moment, it was a good moment to break time. We're seeing his figure. We're taking a moment to take him in, and it's a good pausing moment. So that's one of the ways I think of it. And I do want to say, The more I do this, the more I feel that it's important to come up with your own reasons. You should listen to others. You should get feedback and see what they think about how you're working. You should listen to advice. I mean, these aren't bad things, but you don't want to forget to pay attention to your own voice. What do you think? What do you feel about the work? You could end up, people could praise you maybe, saying, wow, you're following all the rules, but you don't have a voice maybe. AI can follow the rules. It's better that you come up with your own language, your own way of describing and thinking about these things. I think that principle kind of applies across life when it comes to, your sense of self or religion, spiritual beliefs or whatever. It's probably better that you come up with your own language that really feels authentic to you. It's things you really know and have experienced, not just regurgitating things. But if you practice doing that, then you build up that skill. You're more attentive to, well, how do I think about this? What's my instincts tell me? So it'll help over time to do that, I believe. And this Draw Process series has been really good for that purpose. By speaking on these videos about what I do, I'm forced to reflect on what I do. And sometimes I'll go back and watch the videos and I'll see how I thought about something at that given time. It's not very often that I do that, but sometimes I'll watch a bit of an old video, listen to it more like, and I'll notice, oh, that's how I was thinking about my art, and that's how I was thinking about, art is life in a way. Like, I can tell how I was thinking about what life is in myself, as I see how I thought about art. And so that's always kind of interesting to see how you used to think, because that's how you know that you've changed, in contrast to who you were. So with the inking method I use, I do have to somewhat work left to right so that I don't smudge the ink, because it takes a little while to dry. So that's influencing a bit of my decision-making process here. Also, sometimes I will draw the figures first and sketch them, and then go back and put in the background elements that kind of function as like a texture behind them. Sometimes I'll do the outlines of everything, the hill line, the figure, and then I'll go back in and cross-hatch in shadow on the figure. I noticed that I don't have like just a super strict way of going about it. And so I'm still reflecting on, well, why do I choose what I choose when I do? And that reflection, again, there's learning potential. You'll learn when you notice your attention, your focus. That's how you learn, not from regurgitating, facts, not from books. So the ink wash is, the watered down ink that I'm using in this pen. It does cause the ink that I put down with the nib to bleed a little bit. Like, it will wash it off if I work it too much. If it's quite wet in that area, or it's wet and I'm rubbing it over an area again and again, it does start to lift the ink up and cause the ink to bleed. Sometimes that's a cool effect. So if I put a lot of lines on a tree, but I don't mind it getting a little out of focus. I don't need those lines to be so strong and like forward in their contrast. So if I wash it with water and it kind of softens those lines a bit, it kind of helps. So That was a happy accident I discovered, and I use it. Because I'm new at the ink wash, I also noticed that I used to not do any of the ink wash, and so I only had my line work with which to convey, trees in the background and then elements in the foreground and shadow and so on. I would have to scratch in all the shadow, draw it in. I no longer have to do that because of the ink wash, and so because I was new at using ink wash here, um, I'm being more cautious in a sense. So I tried to, ink with lines to the point that it's basically a finished. It looks finished, and then I'll go back over it with ink wash and take that to the point that it's finished. But due to that lack of experience, I can't. I didn't know how much line work I should do and how much I should just leave to gray ink, to the ink wash. As the book goes on, I get better at that. I get better at knowing, um, when I can just not use any lines at all, or just a few, and then throw in ink wash for the rest. Like with this cover, there's actually not very many lines in the background. It's just, but the texture, there's something really nice about the lines that are crisp, but they're softened, they're blended with the gray background, the gray environment, because it brings things out of focus and some things into focus. Another thing that I utilize in this book that you'll notice more later when we're in the cave in a darker environment is what you see on the cover here. I'm using a white opaque paint, and it actually turns kind of blue when it goes on the page. I don't know if it's the shade of white or if it's when it mixes with the ink. I think it's mostly when it mixes with the ink. It turns more blue. Well, I went ahead and let that show in the book by leaving that blue, and so it's actually printed in color. Even though it's a black and white book, there's somewhat little soft tones of color that come through. And so I went ahead and left that slightly blue tone. It's kind of a fun to see that different element. And because it stands out, because it's different, it works really well for like the fire. I can use it has a different feel to it. And, that's it for today. So I'll see you in another week, page 4. And, good luck. Be the practice of your art. Pay attention to what you're doing. And I'll do the same.